The desert of P3X 888 stretched endless under twin suns, heat shimmering off sand dunes that had witnessed 10,000 years of Goa'uld tyranny. A Jaffa patrol marched in formation, 12 warriors in serpent guard armor, staff weapons crackling with compressed energy, eyes cold with the certainty of gods who cannot fall. Their leader raised a fist. The unit halted. Sensors had detected an anomaly 3 clicks north. Energy readings consistent with a failed Goa'uld mothership crash. Possibly ancient technology, definitely worth investigating before reporting to their system log. They advanced with military precision, boots crunching sand, unaware they were marching toward extinction. The darkness came without warning. Not shadow, something alive, something hungry. It swallowed the patrol whole. 12 warriors, 12 screams, then 12 seconds of silence that felt like drowning. When the darkness receded, there were no bodies. Only armor scattered across sand already stained black. 3 hours later, the Stargate on P3X 8D8 roared to life. The event horizon exploded outward in its characteristic splash of blue-white energy, a doorway connecting worlds across impossible distances. SG-1 stepped through. Colonel Jack O'Neill leading with his P-90 raised, Major Samantha Carter scanning with her handheld sensor, Daniel Jackson adjusting his glasses against the sudden brightness, and Teal'c moving with the quiet lethality of a warrior who'd spent a century serving false gods before finding redemption. Their mission brief had been simple. Investigate the Jaffa Patrol's last known coordinates. Determine if the Goa'uld were deploying new weapon systems, extract any useful intelligence. Standard reconnaissance, in and out. O'Neill surveyed the empty dunes with practiced suspicion. Carter, where's our welcoming committee? These guys usually can't wait to shoot at us. Carter's brow furrowed as she studied her scanner. I'm reading residual energy signatures consistent with staff weapon discharge, elevated adrenaline markers in the sand. But no life signs, sir. Not even bodies. Maybe they got bored and went home, O'Neill quipped, but his grip on the P-90 tightened. 12 years fighting the Goa'uld had taught him that empty battlefields were more dangerous than occupied ones. Daniel pointed northeast, where black stains marred the sand in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Jack, look at this. It's almost like a blast radius, but the sand isn't scorched. It's just dark. Teal'c crouched, fingers brushing the blackened grains. His expression, normally stoic even by Jaffa standards, shifted into something resembling unease. This is not Goa'uld technology, nor Asgard, nor ancient. He stood slowly, staff weapon humming to active status. I do not recognize this energy. That's when the corpse moved. A single Jaffa warrior, armor scorched and broken, lay 20 meters to their left. Carter's scanner had read him as deceased. 0 heartbeat, 0 neural activity, 0 body temperature. But his fingers twitched, then his arm, then his entire body convulsed and rose, joints bending in ways that suggested no living muscle controlled them. His eyes opened, not the golden glow of a symbiote, but pure black twin voids that swallowed light. The shadow Jaffa stood perfectly still, head tilted at an angle that screamed wrongness, and then turned toward SG-1 with the mechanical precision of a puppet jerked by invisible strings. Contact! O'Neill's P-90 barked, 3-round burst punching through the Jaffa's chest. The warrior didn't flinch, didn't bleed, just stood there, black smoke leaking from the bullet holes like the universe itself was bleeding out. Carter's scanner went haywire, numbers cycling so fast they blurred. "Sir, I'm reading life signs, but they're negative." "That's not possible. Life signs can't be." She stopped, stared at the readout. "Colonel, whatever that is, it's not alive. It's not dead either. It's something else." From the dunes behind them, a voice cut through the desert wind, low, measured, carrying the weight of someone who'd spoken to death so often they'd learned its language. "Your weapons won't work. He's already dead." SG-1 spun as one, weapons trained on the figure emerging from heat shimmer like a mirage gaining substance. A man, human or human enough, walked toward them with the casual ease of someone strolling through a park rather than a hostile alien desert. He looked young, maybe mid-20s, with sharp features and silver-gray eyes that reflected light like polished steel. Black hair fell across his forehead, and he wore a long, dark coat that didn't belong in this heat, didn't belong in this universe, didn't belong anywhere civilized soldiers should encounter it. No visible weapons, no armor, just a presence that made Teal'c's hand tighten on his staff weapon, and O'Neill's instincts screamed that this, whatever this was, represented a threat magnitude their mission brief hadn't prepared them for. The Shadow Jaffa turned and immediately dropped to one knee, head bowed in absolute submission. "Stand down," the stranger said quietly. The Shadow Warrior collapsed into black smoke that dissolved into sand. O'Neill kept his P90 centered on the stranger's chest. "Okay. So, want to tell me what the hell just happened, who you are, and why you're playing Weekend at Bernie's with dead Jaffa?" The stranger's eyes fixed on O'Neill with the kind of attention that made you remember you were prey. "My name is Jin-Woo. I came through a gate, not yours, and those warriors attacked me, so I killed them. Then I kept them." He paused, head tilting slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. "You're human. From Earth. Tauri." Daniel stepped forward, hands raised in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "How do you know that term?" "Tauri is ancient. The dead remember what the living forget," Jin-Woo said simply. I asked, "Them?" Carter's scanner was still screaming. She adjusted the settings, ran a full spectrum analysis, and felt her stomach drop when the results loaded. "Colonel, I'm detecting energy signatures similar to what we found in that ancient lab on P3R233. The ones studying dimensional physics, but mixed with something organic, something that reads like..." She looked up at Jin-Woo, scientific curiosity warring with professional paranoia. "This is going to sound insane, but your biometric signature is reading as both human and not. Like you're occupying two states of existence simultaneously." Jin-Woo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those silver eyes. Recognition, perhaps even satisfaction. "You have good equipment. Most can't detect that." He took 3 steps closer, and despite SG-1 maintaining their weapons trained on him, none of them pulled the trigger. There was something about him that suggested bullets would be as effective as harsh language. "I need to speak with whoever commands your gate. I've encountered this energy before, parasites that feed on fear and despair, that corrupt everything they touch. You call them Goa'uld." His voice dropped to something colder than the desert night. "I call them prey." Teal'c lowered his staff weapon fractionally, eyes widening in an expression that might have been hope or horror. "You hunt the Goa'uld." "I hunt false gods," Jin-Woo corrected. I've killed 8. These parasites you serve. He glanced at Teal'c's forehead where the golden tattoo marked him as first prime of a system lord. They feel familiar, like the monarchs I destroyed. He looked directly at Teal'c, and the Jaffa warrior saw in those eyes a truth that made his symbiote writhe in instinctive terror. I came here by accident, but now that I'm here... Jin-Woo's hand moved to his side, fingers brushing empty air, and from nowhere, from nothing, a black dagger materialized in his grip, edges smoking with the same darkness that had consumed the Jaffa patrol. I think I'll stay long enough to finish the job. O'Neill lowered his P90, not from trust, but from the tactical realization that if this guy wanted them dead, they already would be. Carter, dial home. Daniel, prep a full briefing. Teal'c, sir. He looked at his friend, saw the barely contained emotion on that stoic face. You good? I am. Teal'c searched for words in a language that had no term for what he was feeling. Uncertain, O'Neill. But if this warrior speaks truth, if he has truly killed gods... The Jaffa's voice cracked just slightly. Then perhaps freedom for my people is not merely a dream. Jin-Woo made the dagger vanish as casually as he'd summoned it. Take me to your leaders. I'll explain everything once. He started walking toward the Stargate without waiting for permission, then paused and looked back. Oh, and tell them not to point weapons at me when I arrive. I've had a long day and I'm trying very hard to be civilized. The smile that crossed his face was the kind predators wore when they'd scented blood. But I'm not very good at it. As SG-1 followed him toward the gate, Carter muttered to O'Neill, "Sir, I don't think the Goa'uld have any idea what's coming." O'Neill watched Jin-Woo walk ahead with the confidence of someone who'd forgotten what fear felt like. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's what worries me." The Stargate activated. The wormhole stabilized, and Sung Jin-Woo, the Shadow Monarch, Ashbourne's heir, the man who'd climbed from the weakest hunter to a king who made gods kneel, stepped through into a universe where humanity had been enslaved for millennia by parasites wearing crowns. He'd killed monarchs. He'd killed dragons. He'd killed the concept of death itself. False gods? Those were just Tuesday. If you love crossovers where power meets purpose, where false gods meet true monsters, where two universes collide and both come out better, hit subscribe and comment your dream matchup. We're building the multiverse one story at a time, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the system lords realize they're not the apex predators anymore. The Stargate command alarm system screamed red the moment unauthorized biometric data flooded through the Event Horizon sensors. Sergeant Walter Harriman's fingers flew across his keyboard in the control room, eyes widening as impossible readings scrolled past. "General Hammond, sir, we have a problem. SG-1's returning with an unscheduled +1, and his energy signature is... I don't even know what to call this, sir." General George Hammond stood behind Walter's station, jaw tight, with the kind of tension that came from commanding Earth's first line of defense against galaxy-spanning empires. 20 years in the Air Force had prepared him for impossible situations. Finding out aliens existed, that gods were actually parasitic snakeheads, that his planet had been a slave farm for millennia. He'd adapted. But the readings on that screen made his veteran instincts scream danger louder than any Goa'uld mothership. Defense teams to the gate room, containment protocols active. And someone tell me what negative life signs means, because that sounds like a contradiction. SG-1 emerged first, O'Neill with his weapon lowered but ready, Carter already pulling out her portable analysis gear, Daniel looking simultaneously fascinated and concerned, Teal'c moving with unusual urgency. Then came the stranger. Jin-Woo stepped through the event horizon like he was walking through a door rather than a wormhole connecting planets across thousands of light years, and the temperature in the gate room dropped 5 degrees. Security teams raised their weapons, M4 carbines, P90s, even a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher because someone in the armory had been feeling creative. 30 guns trained on one man in a black coat. Jin-Woo looked at the weapons, then at Hammond in the control room, then back at the weapons. I specifically asked them not to do this. O'Neill stepped between Jin-Woo and the security teams with the weary energy of someone preventing an international incident. Stand down. Weapons down. Everyone calm down. Nobody needs to die today. He looked up at Hammond. General, we need to talk. Like right now. Conference room. Preferably before our guest decides to demonstrate why pointing guns at him is a really bad idea. Hammond's voice crackled through the intercom. Command absolute. Security teams, maintain positions but lower weapons. SG-1, conference room in 5. Mr. Sung Jin-Woo, the stranger supplied. And I'm not your enemy, yet. That yet is doing a lot of heavy lifting, O'Neill muttered. 10 minutes later, Hammond sat at the head of the briefing table with SG-1 arranged to his left, and Jin-Woo seated calmly to his right, looking entirely unbothered by the armed guards posted at every exit. Carter had her laptop open, running analysis after analysis on the readings she'd captured. Daniel was scribbling notes in 3 languages simultaneously. Teal'c sat perfectly still, but his eyes never left Jin-Woo, watching him the way a drowning man watches a rope. Hammond folded his hands on the table. Mr. Sung, Colonel O'Neill's preliminary report suggests you can reanimate corpses, walked through a Jaffa patrol like they were target practice, and claim to hunt what you call false gourds. Before we continue, I need to know, are you a threat to Earth? Jin-Woo met Hammond's gaze with the kind of directness that made generals remember they were also just men. That depends. Are you enslaved by parasites who pretend to be divine? He paused. No. Then you're not my enemy. The Goa'uld are. Carter looked up from her laptop, scientific excitement overriding military protocol. General, I've been analyzing the energy signatures Jin-Woo emits. They're similar to readings we encountered in ancient dimensional research labs. Specifically experiments involving parallel existence states. But there's something else. She pulled up a split-screen comparison that made Hammond's headache intensify. These readings match residue we've found at Goa'uld archaeological sites, the really old ones, pre-Goa'uld civilization, sites where the symbionts first became parasitic. She looked at Jin-Woo. Your energy signature resonates with theirs, like you're related somehow. Jin-Woo's expression shifted, recognition lighting those silver eyes. I knew it. That feeling when I killed those Jaffa, when I sensed the parasite inside them. He leaned forward, and everyone in the room instinctively leaned back. In my world, there were beings called monarchs. Primordial entities that fed on fear, despair, death itself. They corrupted everything, turned dungeons into slaughterhouses, monsters into weapons, humans into livestock. I killed 8 of them. His hand touched his chest, where beneath the coat lay scars no one in this room could see. Became one of them. The Shadow Monarch. Daniel's pen stopped moving. You're saying the Goa'uld are like these monarchs? That their parasitic nature isn't just biological evolution, but something fundamentally wrong with their existence? I'm saying I've felt this before, Jin-Woo said quietly. The way they feed, the way they corrupt, the way they wear human faces and call themselves gods while draining entire species of hope. His voice dropped to something that made the guards grip their rifles tighter. The monarchs were forces of nature. I respected them as enemies. But these Goa'uld? His lips curved into something that was definitely not a smile. They're just parasites with delusions of grandeur. And I've gotten very good at extermination. Teal'c finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 100 years of shame and rage. I have served the Goa'uld since I was born, watched them enslave worlds, slaughter civilizations, breed humans like cattle. I betrayed my god, Apophis, to fight for freedom. He stood slowly, and Hammond tensed, unsure what was coming. Teal'c placed his right fist over his heart in a Jaffa salute, but directed at Jin-Woo, not Hammond. If you truly hunt false gods, then I pledge my service to your hunt. Show me how to kill them. Show my people how to be free. Jin-Woo studied Teal'c with the intensity of someone reading a book written in scars. Then he stood and mirrored the gesture. Fist over heart. You've already broken free. The hardest part is done. He glanced at Hammond. Your warrior doesn't need me to show him how to kill gods. He needs weapons that can actually do it. His hand extended, palm up, and from thin air materialized that black dagger. Except now it pulsed with energy that made Carter's sensor scream and Teal'c's symbiote writhe in terror. This blade has killed dragons, demons, and monarchs. It's touched by death itself. And I can make more. O'Neill raised his hand like a student with a question. Quick question. When you say touched by death itself, is that metaphorical, or are we talking literal embodiment of existential concepts? Because that feels like important distinction. Jin-Woo's deadpan response was immediate. Does it matter? They die either way. I like him, O'Neill said to Hammond. He's got that whole terrifying competence thing down. Hammond rubbed his temples. In 30 years of military service, he'd made thousands of tactical decisions. This one felt different, felt final. Mr. Sung, if we provide intelligence on Goa'uld positions, system lord locations, fleet movements, can you actually kill them? Not just Jaffa, but the Goa'uld themselves, the system lords? Jin-Woo made the dagger vanish. General Hammond, I've walked through hell dimensions, fought armies alone, died and came back stronger. Those silver eyes blazed with cold certainty. Your system lords are already dead, they just don't know it yet. Hammond stood, extended his hand. Then welcome to Stargate Command, Mr. Sung. Let's kill some false gods. When their hands clasped, every sensor in the base registered a spike of energy that felt like the universe taking a breath before the storm. The briefing room became a war room. Carter pulled up holographic displays of Goa'uld-controlled territories, a spider web of enslavement spanning half the known galaxy. Red zones marked System Lord domains, Apophis, Baal, Kronos, Sokar, Yu, each name representing billions of humans bred, broken, and buried under the weight of false divinity. Jin-Woo stood before the display, hands clasped behind his back, silver eyes tracking planetary designations with the focus of a hunter memorizing prey migration patterns. Daniel activated a historical database, images flickering across screens. Ancient Egypt, Mayan pyramids, Aztec temples, all built by Goa'uld using human slaves as construction equipment. The Goa'uld have been farming Earth for over 10,000 years. They seeded our mythologies, our religions, our entire conception of gods. Ra, Apophis, Hathor, Anubis. Every culture's pantheon was just different system lords claiming territory. His voice carried academic rage. They didn't just enslave our bodies, they enslaved our imagination of what divinity could be. Jin-Woo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. How many humans across the galaxy? Carter checked her database. Conservative estimates, 7 billion on Earth-seeded worlds under Goa'uld control. That's not counting the Jaffa, genetically modified humans who carry immature Goa'uld symbionts as immune systems. They're slaves who police other slaves. She pulled up population charts that painted genocide in statistics. 40% mortality rate for slave populations. Females selected for genetic compatibility with Goa'uld hosts. Males used for labor or military conscription. Children. She stopped, unable to continue. Children are raised to worship their owners. Teal'c finished, voice hollow. Taught that the Goa'uld are gods. That service is honor. That death for your god is the highest achievement. His hand unconsciously touched the golden tattoo marking him as First Prime, a brand he could never remove. I raised my son Ryak to believe these lies, watched him praise Apophis's name. I was proud. Jin-Woo turned from the display. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd walked through hell and learned its language. In my world, there was a dimensional rift. A gate between realities where monsters crawled through to hunt humans. We called them dungeons. I was weak once, the weakest hunter in my country. I watched friends die because I couldn't protect them. His hand clenched. Then I was chosen, given power. I climbed from E rank to national level, killed monarchs who'd existed since the universe began, and when I won, I became what I'd hunted. Those silver eyes blazed with cold fire. I learned something, General. Parasites feed until the host dies. They don't stop. They can't. It's their nature. O'Neill leaned back in his chair. So what? We're the host and the Goa'uld are the infection. Because I gotta say, that metaphor is both accurate and deeply disturbing. Not a metaphor, Jin-Woo said flatly. The energy I'm sensing from your data matches what the monarchs emitted. A frequency that feeds on despair, fear, suffering. Your Goa'uld aren't just using humans. They're farming your negative emotions like crops. He stepped closer to the holographic display, finger tracing a network of slave worlds. Every torture, every execution, every moment of hopelessness, they're feeding on it, getting stronger. And you can't win conventionally because they've had 10,000 years to perfect the system. Hammond's expression hardened with the realization of a general seeing the true battlefield for the first time. We've been fighting a war. You're saying we've been fighting a harvest. Yes. Jin-Woo's hand moved through the hologram, and where his fingers passed, the projection flickered with black static. But I know how to burn the field. He turned to face Hammond directly. I'll hunt your system lords. Kill them. Free their territories. But I need intelligence. Locations. Fleet positions. Population centers to evacuate. His tone brooked no argument. And I work alone. Your team stay back. I won't risk human casualties when I can end this myself. Negative, Hammond said immediately. We don't send anyone into hostile territory without support, and we sure as hell don't let unknown assets operate without oversight. Jin-Woo's smile was sharp enough to cut. General, I've killed beings that could level your planet with a thought. I've commanded armies that made dragons kneel. I've walked through death and made it my servant. He raised his hand, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Shadows crawled from corners, coalesced, and formed into a perfect replica of a Jaffa warrior. Black-eyed, silent, absolutely still. This is one soldier from my legion. I have thousands. How many men will you lose trying to oversee me? The shadow Jaffa dissolved like smoke. Teal'c stood abruptly. I will accompany him. Everyone turned. The Jaffa's expression held something between desperation and hope. I have spent a century enslaving my people in Apophis's name. I know Goa'uld protocols, security systems, fleet movements. I speak every dialect of Goa'uld command language. He looked at Jin-Woo with the intensity of a drowning man seeing rescue. You have power, I have knowledge. Together, we can strike where it hurts the most. Jin-Woo studied Teal'c for a long moment, then nodded once. You've broken free from a parasite that's been in your species for generations. That takes strength most humans never find. He extended his hand. I'll accept one guide, but you follow my lead. When I say run, you run. When I say fight, you fight. And when I say hide, his smile turned predatory. You watch what happens to false gods who forgot they're mortal. Teal'c clasped Jin-Woo's hand. The Jaffa's symbiote writhed violently, sensing something in Jin-Woo's touch that triggered primal terror. I accept your terms, Shadow Monarch. O'Neill raised his hand again. Just for the record, can we pause and acknowledge that we're forming a Black Ops team with a guy who controls shadow zombies to fight snake parasites who think they're gods? Because my mission reports are getting really weird. Carter was already pulling up tactical data. Sir, if we're doing this, we need to choose the first target carefully. Hit somewhere that sends a message but doesn't trigger a full system Lord alliance. She highlighted a planet in the Kalyam sector. Chulak, Apophis's primary Jaffa training world. Massive slave population, strategic importance, but not heavily defended. The Goa'uld consider it too loyal to rebel. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. How many slaves? 60,000 humans. Another 20,000 Jaffa warriors. How many can you evacuate before I attack? Carter blinked. We'd need weeks to extract that many people through the Stargate. Then I'll give you weeks, Jin-Woo interrupted. I'll hit the command structure first, create chaos, pull the military response. Your teams extract civilians during the confusion. He looked at Hammond. I don't kill slaves. I free them. Then I let them choose what to do with their freedom. Hammond's expression shifted, respect replacing suspicion. You've done this before. In every dungeon I cleared, in every city I saved, in every world I protected. Jin-Woo's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd won too many battles to celebrate. I'm not a hero, General. I'm a hunter who learned that the best prey are the ones who eat the innocent. He turned back to the holographic display of Chulak, and his reflection in the projection made him look like a ghost haunting the future. So point me at your false gods. Tell me where they sleep, and I'll show them what real nightmares look like. Aboard the Hatak mothership, Serpent's Fang. System Lord Apophis sat upon his throne of gold and lies, hand resting on the armrest, where a control crystal pulsed with the vital signs of 10,000 Jaffa warriors spread across his domain. His host body, stolen from a human centuries ago, wore the ceremonial armor of a god. Serpent motifs in gold, eyes blazing with the bioluminescence of a parasitic symbiote that had convinced itself it was divine. First Prime Teal'c had betrayed him, joined the Towery rebels, but Apophis had crushed rebellions before. Humans were abundant. Loyalty was purchased with fear, and fear was the currency in which system lords traded. A Jaffa commander approached, prostrating himself with forehead pressed to cold metal decking. "My Lord Apophis, God of gods, we have lost contact with the patrol on P3X888. Their life signs terminated simultaneously 14 hours ago." Apophis barely glanced up from the tactical display showing his fleet positions. "Replicators?" "Negative, my lord. The planet shows no signs of replicator technology. No biomechanical signatures. No consumption patterns." The commander's voice trembled with the awareness that delivering bad news to a god was often a terminal career decision. "The energy readings are unprecedented. Our sensors detected dimensional distortion, consistent with ancient gate technology, but not a Stargate activation." That got Apophis's attention. Ancient technology was power, the kind that let system lords ascend to positions where other Goa'uld knelt. He'd spent 3 millennia acquiring ancient devices, forbidden knowledge, anything that gave him an edge over rivals like Baal or you. "Show me." The holographic projection expanded, displaying P3X888's final sensor logs. 12 Jaffa life signs active, then a surge of energy that made Apophis's eyes narrow, black, corrosive, reading as both matter and antimatter simultaneously. The life signs didn't fade. They inverted. Negative readings where positive should be. Death masquerading as life. "What is this?" Apophis stood, God presence radiating the kind of intimidation that made entire planets surrender without firing a shot. "Unknown, my lord, but 3 hours later, the Towery arrived through the Stargate. They remained 17 minutes, then departed with an additional, unidentified biosignature." Apophis's hand clenched the armrest hard enough to crack the crystal. The Towery, the humans who'd killed Ra, collapsed the galactic order, spread rebellion like disease. And now they'd acquired something from P3X888, something powerful enough to make 12 Jaffa vanish. "Send a battalion, full tactical loadout. I want whatever the Towery found, and I want the planet glassed if it poses a threat to my domain." The commander hesitated. "My lord, should we not consult the system lords? If this is ancient technology—" "I am a system lord," Apophis interrupted, voice dropping to the lethal purr of a predator addressing prey. "And I do not share." He activated the ship's communication array, voice booming across his fleet. "Commander Rachnor, you are ordered to P3X888 with 200 Jaffa. Investigate the anomaly. Capture any technology. Kill anything that resists." He smiled, and it was the expression of something wearing a human face like a mask. "And if you encounter Towery, make them scream." 24 hours later, 2 Teltok cargo ships descended through P3X888's atmosphere, disgorging 200 Jaffa warriors in perfect formation. Commander Rachnor, a veteran of 50 campaigns, survivor of the war against Sokar, believer in Apophis with the zealotry of the truly indoctrinated, surveyed the empty desert with tactical efficiency. His armor bore the marks of battles won, his staff weapon hummed with compressed plasma, and his faith in his god's supremacy was absolute. The Tauri were insects. Whatever they'd found here would belong to Apophis by sunset. "Spread out," he commanded. "Scanning's pattern Delta. Report any anomalies." The Jaffa advanced in disciplined ranks, sensors sweeping for energy signatures, weapons ready to vaporize anything that moved. They found the black-stained sand where the previous patrol had died. Found scorch marks that didn't match any known weapon discharge. Found silence that felt too heavy, too expectant, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Then they found him. Sung Jin-Woo sat on a sand dune 300 meters out, relaxed as someone enjoying a beach vacation rather than facing 200 armed warriors. That black coat rippled in wind that shouldn't exist, silver eyes tracking the Jaffa advance with the disinterest of someone watching ants. He didn't stand, didn't reach for weapons, just watched. Rak-Nor raised his staff weapon. "You are trespassing in the domain of the god Apophis. Surrender, and your death will be swift." Jin-Woo tilted his head slightly. "Your god sent 200 soldiers to investigate 12 deaths. That's either arrogance or stupidity." His smile was colder than the desert night. "I'm betting both." "Fire!" 200 staff weapons discharged simultaneously. Concentrated plasma bolts capable of vaporizing stone, melting steel, reducing flesh to ash. The air itself screamed with thermal energy as the barrage converged on Jin-Woo's position, turning sand to glass, obliterating the dune in an explosion that registered on seismic monitors 3 planets away. When the smoke cleared, Jin-Woo stood exactly where he'd been sitting, coat unmarred, expression unchanged. Black shadows writhed around him like living armor, absorbing the energy of 200 plasma blasts and converting it into something darker. My turn. He didn't move, didn't gesture, just spoke one word in a voice that resonated with the finality of closed caskets and final breaths. "Arise." The sand erupted, not from below, from memory itself. Every Jaffa who died on this planet over 10,000 years. Gold occupation. Every slave worked to death building monuments to false gods. Every warrior fallen in battles that meant nothing. They rose. Shadow forms clawed from the ground, wearing the faces they died with, carrying the weapons they'd been buried with, eyes blazing with black fire that screamed vengeance postponed but not forgotten. Commander Rak-Nor watched his formation collapse into chaos as Shadow Jaffa emerged from the sand beneath his warriors' feet. 200 living soldiers faced 400 dead ones, and the dead weren't afraid of plasma fire. A shadow warrior took a staff blast to the chest, absorbed it, and kept advancing with mechanical inevitability. Another lost its arm and simply grew another from smoke and rage. "Fall back," Rak-Nor screamed. "Retreat to the—" Jin-Woo appeared in front of him. No running, no teleportation, just suddenly present like he'd always been there. The dagger materialized in his hand, black blade pulsing with energy that made Rak-Nor's symbiote shriek inside his pouch. "Tell your god something for me." Jin-Woo's voice was conversational, almost polite. "Tell him the hunt has started. Tell him I'm coming for every system lord who thinks mortality is optional. Tell him." The dagger pressed against Rak-Nor's throat, not cutting, just resting there like a promise. "Tell him the Shadow Monarch remembers what false gods taste like." Then Jin-Woo stepped back, and Rak-Nor collapsed, symbiote flooding his system with adrenaline just to keep him conscious through the terror. Run! Tell Apophis what you saw, and make sure he understands. I let you live because dead messengers can't spread fear." Ragnar ran. Behind him, his battalion screamed as shadows pulled them into sand that had become hungry. He reached the tailtuck, ordered emergency liftoff, and as the cargo ship clawed for orbit, he looked back through the viewport at the desert below. Jin-Woo stood alone among 400 shadow soldiers, looking up at the fleeing ship with eyes that promised this was just the beginning. The transmission to Apophis went out 3 hours later. When the System Lord watched the recording, saw his battalion consumed, saw the shadows rise, saw the human who commanded death itself, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 3,000 years. Fear. The emergency briefing at Stargate Command convened at 0300 hours, everyone running on coffee and adrenaline. Hammond stood at the head of the table with satellite intelligence from the NID, SGC reconnaissance data, and a video file that made even seasoned officers pale. The footage showed Ragnar's battalion, 200 elite Jaffa warriors, being systematically dismantled by an army that rose from sand like nightmare made manifest. 400 shadow soldiers moving with hive mind precision, absorbing weapons fire, dragging living Jaffa into the ground, while their screams echoed across frequencies that shouldn't exist. O'Neill watched the video for the third time, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. Okay, so just to recap, Jin-Woo sat alone on a sand dune, tanked 200 simultaneous plasma blasts like they were spitballs, then raised an army of the ancient dead to obliterate Apophis's finest. He set down the mug. And we're allied with him. This is fine. Everything is fine. Carter's laptop displayed energy analysis that made physics weep. Sir, the power output Jin-Woo demonstrated exceeds anything we've encountered short of ancient technology. He's converting matter into what I can only describe as weaponized entropy, death given form and purpose. The shadows aren't illusions or holograms. They're actual reanimated matter held together by his will. She looked up, scientific awe warring with tactical concern. General, if he wanted to, Jin-Woo could walk through the Stargate into Goa'uld High Council chambers and kill every System Lord before their shields even activated. Then why doesn't he? Daniel adjusted his glasses, expression thoughtful. He's been here 48 hours. He could have demanded gate addresses, gone solo, started a one-man crusade. But he's waiting, coordinating, asking for intelligence rather than just attacking blindly. He pulled up ancient texts on his tablet, Egyptian hieroglyphs depicting Ra's armies conquering Earth. The Goa'uld ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Jin-Woo has both, but he's not using them like a tyrant. He's using them like a soldier. Teal'c finished. The Jaffa sat perfectly still, but his eyes held the intensity of someone witnessing prophecy fulfilled. I have served under system lords who commanded billions. They ruled through terror, but their power was borrowed. Stolen technology, enslaved armies, parasitic immortality. Sung Jin-Woo's power is earned. He climbed from weakness to become a monarch, yet he defers to your authority, General Hammond. Teal'c's voice carried reverence that made Hammond uncomfortable. I've never seen a god show respect to mortals. Only tyrants demand it. Hammond rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of a decision that would define Earth's role in galactic politics. Colonel, your assessment. Can we trust him? O'Neill leaned back, fingers drumming the table in that way that meant he was thinking past the obvious. Here's what I know. Jin-Woo killed 12 Jaffa who attacked him first. Didn't hunt them down, didn't torture them, just ended the threat. He came to SGC willingly when he could have vanished. He's asking for intel instead of demanding it. And when Ragnor's battalion showed up, 200 guys trying to kill him, he let the commander live to deliver a message. O'Neill met Hammond's gaze. He's not a monster, sir. He's something scarier, a weapon with a conscience. And if that conscience changes, Hammond pressed, if he decides Earth's in his way? The door opened. Jin-Woo entered without knocking, moving with that unsettling silence that made trained soldiers nervous. He'd been listening, probably the whole time. Then you activate your self-destruct, bury the Stargate, and hope I respect the gesture enough to leave peacefully. He crossed to the holographic display showing Goa'uld territories, each red zone representing billions of enslaved humans. But I won't decide that. You know why? He turned, silver eyes reflecting conference room lights like polished mirrors. Because I've been where you are, alone, outmatched, facing enemies who'd existed for eons while I'd barely existed for decades. And I learned something, General. What's that? Hammond asked quietly. Power without purpose is just destruction, and I've destroyed enough. Jin-Woo's hand touched the hologram, fingers tracing the network of slave worlds. In my universe, I became the Shadow Monarch because I wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Hunters who'd die in dungeons, civilians who'd never asked for monsters to crawl through gates into their reality. I won, killed the monarchs, closed the gates. His voice dropped, carrying a weariness that made him seem older than his apparent years. Then I woke up here, another universe, another war, more parasites wearing crowns, calling themselves gods. He looked at Hammond with an expression that was almost pleading. I didn't ask for this. But now that I'm here, what do I do? Walk away. Let billions suffer because it's not my universe, not my fight. The room was silent. Daniel spoke first, voice gentle. You're lonely. Jin-Woo's mask slipped. Just for a second, just enough. I'm a king without a kingdom, a hunter without prey that matters. I left my world because there was nothing left to fight, nothing left to protect. Everyone I loved was safe, and He stopped, jaw tight. I didn't know what to do with peace. His hands clenched. So yeah, Dr. Jackson, I'm lonely, and I'm angry. And when I felt those Goa'uld, sensed that same parasitic corruption that nearly destroyed my entire reality, I thought, maybe this is why I'm here. Maybe this is the fight I'm supposed to finish. Hammond stood slowly, crossing to where Jin-Woo stood by the hologram. The general was shorter, older, carrying the weight of command rather than cosmic power. But when he extended his hand, it wasn't a subordinate gesture. It was peer to peer. Mr. Sung Jin-Woo, I'm authorizing full cooperation between Stargate Command and your operations. We'll provide intelligence, extraction support, tactical coordination. You'll have access to all Goa'uld data we've compiled over 6 years of fighting them. He gripped Jin-Woo's hand firmly. But this is a partnership. You follow rules of engagement. You coordinate with my teams, and you understand that every action you take reflects on Earth. Can you accept that? Jin-Woo's smile was small but genuine. I've been a solo hunter long enough, General. Maybe it's time I learn to work with a team again. O'Neill stood, stretching. Great. Touching moment. Love it. Now can we talk about the plan? because I'm assuming we're not just going to let Jin-Woo shadow murder his way through the galaxy without proper tactical support. Carter pulled up Chulak's planetary data. First mission is evacuation and disruption. SG teams extract civilians while Jin-Woo handles military assets. We estimate 72 hours for full extraction. 60,000 people through the Stargate will strain our logistics. I'll give you 96, Jin-Woo said. Hit the command structure. Make it look like internal rebellion. Keep their attention on the military while you work. He studied the tactical map with a hunter's focus. Teal'c, you know their patrol patterns. Every rotation, every shift change, every weakness in their security protocols. Teal'c confirmed, standing. I trained half those warriors. They will not expect betrayal from the strategies I taught them. Jin-Woo nodded approval. Then we leave in 6 hours. I need to prepare. Prepare how? O'Neill asked. Jin-Woo's expression shifted into something predatory. I need to visit your armory. If we're starting a war against false gods, I should probably arm my soldiers with weapons that actually hurt them. Those silver eyes blazed. And I have a lot of soldiers. Chulak's twin moons hung low over the temple city of Kebra, casting long shadows across stone structures built by 10 generations of human slaves who'd never known freedom. The Stargate sat at the city's heart, surrounded by fortifications that had repelled 3 Tok'ra incursions and a System-Lord invasion attempt. 500 Jaffa warriors patrolled the walls, staff weapons charged, faith in Apophis absolute. Their god had ruled this world for 4,000 years. Nothing challenged that supremacy. Nothing dared. Jin-Woo emerged from the Stargate alone, stepping through the event horizon at 0200 local time when patrols were lightest but not absent. He wore the same black coat, same unreadable expression, but now he carried something new. A sword forged in SGC's experimental weapons lab using Naquada alloy and ancient metal composites that Carter had reverse-engineered from Goa'uld technology. The blade hummed with energy that made reality uncomfortable, and when Jin-Woo channeled his power through it, the weapon drank shadows like it had been waiting centuries for this exact wielder. Teal'c emerged next, wearing Jaffa armor but carrying Earth weapons. P-90 submachine gun, Beretta sidearm, tactical vest loaded with C4 that O'Neill had personally helped him pack. The Jaffa's face was a mask of controlled fury as he surveyed his former home. I trained on these walls, led patrols through these streets, taught young Jaffa that dying for Apophis was honor. His voice cracked slightly. I created this prison. Then help me tear it down, Jin-Woo said simply. The alarm sounded 3 seconds later. Jaffa guards spotting unauthorized Stargate activation. Warriors poured from barracks, forming defensive perimeters with the precision of soldiers who drilled these scenarios for lifetimes. Commander Bratak's voice boomed across the city square, staff weapon raised. Sholva, traitor Teal'c returns. Capture him alive. Apophis demands his suffering. Teal'c raised his P-90, but Jin-Woo touched his arm. Not yet. Let them come. He closed his eyes, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Let them all come. 400 Jaffa warriors converged on the gate platform, a tsunami of armor and plasma weapons designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. They'd fought Tok'ra rebels, repelled Goa'uld invasions, held this city against forces that would have broken weaker defenders. But they'd never faced someone who'd killed gods and worn their crowns. Jin-Woo's eyes snapped open, silver blazing to white-hot luminescent. Arise, the ground cracked. Not with seismic force, but with the sound of reality splitting at the seams. From beneath stone streets laid by slaves, from mass graves hidden under temple foundations, from execution grounds that had drunk the blood of 10,000 rebellions. They rose. Shadow Jaffa, shadow humans, shadow children who died crying for gods that never answered. They emerged with faces frozen in their final moments, wearing armor from wars fought millennia ago, carrying weapons that predated the Goa'ul's rise to power. But these weren't mindless undead. Jin-Woo had learned precision over his years as Shadow Monarch. Each shadow retained echoes of who they'd been: the warrior's stance, the slave's defiance, the child's innocence corrupted by violence. They rose as a legion of grief given form, and when they stood assembled, 600 strong, facing 400 living Jaffa, the city fell silent. Commander Bratak stared at the shadow army with dawning horror. His staff weapon trembled. "What sorcery is this? What false magic?" "Not magic," Jin-Woo interrupted, voice carrying across the square with unnatural clarity. "Memory. Every person Apophis murdered, every slave worked to death, every child sacrificed to feed his ego." He raised the Naquada sword, and the shadows moved as one, perfect synchronization that no living army could match. "They remember, and they want justice." Teal'c stepped forward, voice booming with the authority of a first prime who'd commanded these very warriors. "Jaffa of Chulak, I am Teal'c, first prime who was. I served Apophis for a century. I believed his divinity. I enforced his tyranny." He threw down his staff weapon, the ceremonial weapon of his former rank. "I was wrong. Apophis is not a god. He is a parasite. And this man," he gestured to Jin-Woo, "this warrior has killed beings that made system lords look like children playing with toys. He offers you a choice. Lay down your weapons and live free, or die defending a lie." Commander Bratak's face twisted with rage and fear. "Treachery! Fire! Kill the Sholva and his demon master." Staff weapons discharged, a wall of plasma converging on Jin-Woo and Teal'c. But the Shadow Army moved first, flowing forward like liquid darkness, absorbing the plasma blasts with bodies that converted energy into fuel. A Shadow Warrior took a direct hit, staggered, then absorbed the blast and grew larger, more substantial, more real. Another lost half its torso and simply regenerated from the smoke and stolen light. Jin-Woo didn't move, didn't need to. His army fought with a precision that made Teal'c's tactical training look amateur. Flanking maneuvers, concentrated fire suppression, coordinated charges that isolated groups of living Jaffa and overwhelmed them through sheer, relentless pressure. But they weren't killing. Jin-Woo had ordered restraint. The shadows disarmed, disabled, dragged warriors to the ground and held them there while their staff weapons scattered across blood-stained stone. Teal'c engaged personally, P-90 firing controlled bursts that shattered staff weapons without killing their wielders. He moved through formations he'd designed, exploiting weaknesses he'd deliberately built into training protocols, dismantling his own legacy with brutal efficiency. When he faced warriors he'd trained personally, young Jaffa, who'd called him Master, he hesitated only once before shooting the weapon from their hands. "I failed you," he said to each one. "I taught you to worship death. Now learn to live." The battle lasted 7 minutes. 400 Jaffa disarmed, pinned beneath shadow warriors who held them immobile but unharmed. Not a single death, just absolute, overwhelming, humiliating defeat. Jin-Woo walked through the aftermath, sword resting on his shoulder, surveying his work with a hunter's satisfaction. He stopped at Commander Bratak, who lay pinned beneath a shadow Jaffa, wearing armor from Apophis's first conquest of Chulak 4,000 years ago. The shadow's face was a young woman's, barely 16 when she died, and her expression carried a sorrow that made Bratak's symbiote writhe in primal terror. "Look at her," Jin-Woo commanded. "See who your god murdered to build this city." Bratak looked, saw, and something in his eyes broke. Jin-Woo knelt, meeting the commander's gaze. "You're not evil. You're enslaved. The symbiote in your pouch feeds you lies about divinity while feeding Apophis your devotion, but you're still human underneath." He stood, addressing all the captured Jaffa. "I'm going to give you something your god never did. A choice. Join the rebellion, help free your people, and I'll show you how to kill the parasites who stole your species. Or stay loyal to Apophis, and I'll let you go to tell him what happened here." Silence. Then Bratak spoke, voice thick with a century of suppressed doubt finally breaking surface. "If we betray our god, the symbiote will kill us. Without it, we die within days." Teal'c stepped forward, opening his Jaffa pouch to reveal his own symbiote. Healthy, thriving, but no longer revered. The Tauri are developing alternatives, drugs that suppress the symbiote's control, technologies that replace its immune function. It will take time, but freedom is possible. His voice dropped to something almost pleading. "I have lived free for 3 years, my brothers, and I would rather die tomorrow as a free man than live 1,000 years as a slave." Jin-Woo watched calculations play across 400 faces. Fear warring with hope, indoctrination crumbling against evidence of power that made system lords look weak. He didn't push, didn't threaten, just waited while his shadow army stood vigilant and the twin moons cast judgment in silver light. Finally, Bratak spoke. "I will join your rebellion, Shadow Monarch. Not from fear, but because in one night you have done what the Tok'ra could not accomplish in centuries. You made me question my god." One by one, Jaffa warriors laid down their armor. Not all, perhaps a third refused, clinging to faith because losing it meant losing identity. Jin-Woo released them as promised, watching them flee toward Teltak cargo ships that would carry news of this night to Apophis himself. Let them run. Fear was a message written in the language of survival. Behind him, SG teams emerged for the Stargate. Carter leading. Extraction protocols, Daniel coordinating with freed slaves, O'Neill providing security with that itchy trigger finger hovering near his P-90. The evacuation had begun. Teal'c stood on the city walls, watching sunrise illuminate a world he'd helped enslave. Tears tracked down his face, the first he'd allowed himself since betraying Apophis. Jin-Woo joined him silently. "You did well." "I freed one city," Teal'c whispered. "Apophis enslaves thousands. Then we free those too." Jin-Woo's hand rested on Teal'c's shoulder. "One city at a time, until there's nothing left for false gods to rule." The High Council chamber existed outside normal space, accessible only through a network of ring transporters that pulled system lords from their throne worlds into a pocket dimension the ancients had built for diplomatic summits 10,000 years ago. Crystal walls pulsed with energy that could withstand Nova-level detonations, and at the chamber's heart sat 7 thrones arranged in a circle. each one carved from materials harvested from conquered worlds, each representing a god who commanded billions. Today, 5 thrones were occupied. The remaining 2 belonged to system lords who'd learned the hard way that missing council summons was a terminal political decision. Apophis sat rigid on his throne of black obsidian, serpent motifs coiling up armrests stained with the blood of previous occupants. His host body, a human stolen from Earth during the Crusades, wore ceremonial armor that barely contained the rage radiating from him like heat distortion. He'd lost Chulak, 400 Jaffa, disarmed without casualties but with something worse than death. Doubt. Commander Bratak's defection had triggered a cascade. 50 Jaffa warriors renouncing their faith, another 100 questioning orders, entire battalions requesting reassignment away from territories where the Shadow Monarch might appear. His empire was bleeding loyalty, and loyalty was the only currency that mattered when your divinity was a lie. Baal lounged on his throne of liquid metal, nanite-forged smart material that shifted to accommodate his posture, with the casual arrogance of a system lord who'd survived 1,000 assassination attempts through pure cunning. His host was younger than Apophis's, attractive in the way predators are beautiful, and his voice carried mockery like perfume. So, the great Apophis, conqueror of worlds, defeater of Sokar, self-proclaimed Supreme System Lord, was humiliated by one human with parlor tricks. How delightfully embarrassing. Apophis's eyes blazed with symbiotic fury. This is not a human. The entity calling itself Sung Jin-Woo commands forces beyond our understanding. Shadows that rise from death itself, armies that cannot be killed, power that absorbs our weapons and grows stronger. He activated a holographic projection captured from Ragnor's helmet cam, footage that made even Baal's smirk falter. 400 shadow warriors emerging from sand, moving with hive-mind precision, dragging Jaffa into the ground while their screams harmonized in frequencies that suggested something older than the Goa'ul's parasitic evolution. Watch and tell me this is parlor tricks. Lord Yu, oldest of the system lords, having ruled China when Apophis was still a minor god barely controlling a single Hatak, leaned forward with the careful attention of someone who'd survived by recognizing threats early. His host body was ancient, kept functional through sarcophagus addiction that was slowly degrading his mind, but his tactical genius remained sharp. The Tauri have acquired a weapon, or perhaps... His eyes narrowed. The weapon has acquired the Tauri. Either way, this changes the balance. If other system lords learn, they can be defeated without orbital bombardment, without superior fleet positions. Rebellions will spread like plague. Kronos, god of time and strategy, drummed fingers on his throne of crystallized chronology, an ancient device he'd stolen millennia ago that let him perceive probability streams. I've calculated 6,000 possible responses to this threat. In 83% of scenarios, attempting to kill this Shadow Monarch results in catastrophic losses. In 97%, attacking him directly triggers a cascade of Jaffa rebellions across our territories. He paused, and something like fear entered his voice. In 4% of scenarios, he wins, completely. Every system lord dead within a solar year. The chamber fell silent. System lords did not discuss losing. Their entire authority structure was built on the illusion of invincibility. Gods did not fall, gods did not bleed, gods did not fear. But the footage kept playing on loop. shadows rising, Jaffa falling, and at the center, one human who commanded death with the casualness of someone who'd forgotten mortality was supposed to be permanent. Neerti, goddess of destruction and genetic manipulation, spoke from her throne of living tissue, voice syrupy with the kind of curiosity that preceded horrific experiments. I want a sample. Living or dead, I don't care. This Shadow Monarch's genetic structure must be extraordinary to channel such power. Imagine if we could replicate it, enhance our host bodies beyond current limitations. You want to dissect him, Baal translated flatly. Excellent plan. I'm sure he'll cooperate wonderfully after you ask nicely. His sarcasm was acid. Or perhaps we should consider that this entity has killed beings he calls monarchs. Entities that, based on the energy signatures our sensors captured, rival ancient technology in pure destructive output. He's not a human with powers. He's something wearing a human face. Apophis slammed his fist on the throne armrest, cracking obsidian. Then we glass Earth from orbit, obliterate the Tauri before they weaponize him further. I have 12 Hatak motherships in position, and he has shadows that rose from beneath Chulak's streets. You interrupted, voice heavy with the weariness of age. Tell me, Apophis, how do you bombard an enemy who exists partially outside our dimensional framework? How do you target an army that has already died once and learned the lesson? He stood slowly, ancient joints creaking. I fought the ancients when they still walked as flesh. I've seen technology that could rewrite reality. This Shadow Monarch feels different. Older. Like he's touched something we abandoned when we chose parasitism over evolution. Baal stood as well, metal throne flowing back into dormancy. I propose a temporary alliance. Distasteful, I know. We all hate each other with the passion of professional rivals. But if we don't eliminate this threat now, before the Tauri fully weaponize him, we'll face coordinated rebellions across every slave world. He activated his own tactical display, showing probability matrices that made everyone uncomfortable. He freed Chulak without firing a shot. Imagine if he hits Dakara or Tartarus or any of our primary Jaffa breeding worlds. We lose our military infrastructure within months. Kronos nodded slowly. Baal is correct. The Shadow Monarch isn't playing our game. Fleet superiority, political maneuvering, strategic bombardment. He's rewriting the rules by demonstrating that our godhood is theater. And theater only works when the audience believes. Apophis wanted to argue, wanted to assert dominance, wanted to maintain the pride that had carried him through 3 millennia of galactic conquest. But the footage kept looping. 400 Jaffa, 7 minutes. 0 casualties, but total defeat. And worse, the way his warriors had looked at Jin-Woo. Not with hatred, with reverence. The kind reserved for beings who transcended mortal limitations. What do you propose? Apophis asked through clenched teeth. Baal's smile was sharp enough to cut vacuum. We send an armada, not one system lord's fleet, all of ours. 3 Hatak motherships from each council member. 15 capital ships, 10,000 Jaffa. Al-Kesh bombers, death gliders. The kind of overwhelming force we usually reserve for ancient facilities or Asgard incursions. He leaned forward, eyes blazing with calculated malice. We pick a world where the Tauri are operating, somewhere isolated enough that collateral damage doesn't matter, and we demonstrate what happens when mortals challenge gods. Lord Yu's expression was grave. You propose genocide to prove a point. I propose reminding the galaxy why we're called System Lords. Baal corrected. Fear is our currency. This Shadow Monarch has been spending it freely. Time to remind everyone we have more. Nirti clapped her hands in delight. Oh, wonderful. A proper demonstration of divine wrath. I'll bring my enhanced Jaffa, the ones with the genetic modifications that make them resistant to most projectile weapons. Should be educational. Apophis wanted to refuse on principle, hated allying with Baal, despised taking orders from someone who'd mocked his losses. But the alternative was watching his empire crumble one freed slave at a time. Agreed. We convene our fleets at... He checked recent intelligence on Tauri operations. P2X555. The Tauri have been running extraction operations there for 2 weeks. If the Shadow Monarch is helping them, he'll be present. And if he's not? Kronos asked. Baal's smile widened. Then we glass the planet anyway. Send a message. Help the Tauri. Share their fate. Simple, elegant, effective. The vote was unanimous. 5 System Lords agreeing to cooperate, an event so rare that the last time it happened was during the war against Sokar's attempted resurrection. Orders went out across subspace frequencies, Hatak motherships breaking orbit from garrison worlds, Jaffa battalions mobilizing with the fervor of soldiers, promised divine retribution. 15 capital ships representing 5 System Lords' combined might, converging on a single planet where a human with silver eyes had been teaching slaves to dream of freedom. In the High Council chamber, Apophis stood before the holographic projection one final time, watched Jin-Woo's face, calm, unbothered, casually devastating, and felt something he'd suppressed for 3,000 years. Doubt. Not about his divinity. About whether divinity mattered when facing something that killed gods for sport. P2X555 was a graveyard pretending to be a planet. 3,000 years of Goa'uld occupation had stripped the world to essentials. Mining operations that fed Naquada to System Lord war machines, slave populations bred for labor efficiency, and mass graves where exhausted humans were buried in unmarked trenches when their productivity dropped below acceptable margins. The Tauri had been running extraction operations for 16 days, pulling 500 slaves per rotation through the Stargate while SG teams provided security. It was slow, methodical work, the kind that saved lives one family at a time while the galaxy burned around them. Then the sensors screamed. Carter's laptop erupted with proximity warnings as 15 hyperspace windows tore open in high orbit, each one vomiting a Hatak mothership into real space with the casual violence of gods arriving for judgment. The pyramid-shaped vessels hung in formation like golden daggers pointed at the planet's heart, and across all frequencies came a message that made every SGC operator's blood freeze. Tauri rebels and slaves of P2X555, you have been marked for divine retribution. The System Lords have convened. Your execution begins now. O'Neill grabbed the radio, voice tight with the kind of calm that preceded absolute chaos. All teams, emergency extraction, get everyone through the gate now. We've got 15, Jesus Christ, 15 motherships inbound, and I'm betting they're not here to negotiate. Daniel was already herding civilians toward the Stargate. 300 terrified humans who'd spent their lives believing Goa'uld were invincible, watching their worst nightmare materialize in the sky. Jack, we can't evacuate everyone in time. We need at least 2 hours for this many people. "We don't have 2 hours," Carter shouted, scanner displaying tactical data that painted genocide in mathematics. "Those Hartaks are charging orbital bombardment cannons. Yield estimates suggest enough firepower to sterilize the entire continent. They're not here to capture. They're here to make an example." Teal'c stood on a ridge overlooking the Stargate complex, staff weapon gripped so tight the metal groaned. He watched death gliders launch from Hartak hangars, hundreds of them, swarming like locusts, and beneath them, Teltak cargo ships descending loaded with Jaffa warriors armored for ground assault. "They send an armada," he whispered. "The system lords fear him enough to unite." Jin-Woo appeared beside Teal'c without sound or warning, coat rippling in wind that carried the ozone smell of incoming plasma bombardment. His expression was unreadable, but those silver eyes tracked every ship, every formation, calculating odds with the precision of someone who'd faced worse and walked away wearing crowns taken from corpses. "How many Jaffa?" 10,000, Teal'c said hoarsely. "Perhaps more. 5 system lords have committed their finest warriors." He turned to Jin-Woo and his voice cracked, with something between hope and despair. "We must retreat. Even you cannot face—" "I'm not retreating." Jin-Woo's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Get everyone through the gate. I'll buy you time. You cannot hold 15 motherships alone." Jin-Woo's smile was colder than the void between stars. "Watch me." The first Teltak landed 3 clicks from the Stargate, ramp dropping to disgorge 200 Jaffa in perfect formation. Then another. Within 5 minutes, 10,000 warriors stood assembled on the planet's surface, the largest ground force deployed since the war against Sokar, armed with staff weapons, plasma grenades, and the absolute certainty that their god's wrath was righteous. Commander positions were held by first primes from 5 system lords. Apophis's best, Baal's deadliest, U's most experienced, Kronos's most loyal, Neerti's genetically enhanced super soldiers. They'd been promised that this Shadow Monarch would fall today, that his body would be displayed across every slave world as proof that rebellion was futile. They marched toward the Stargate in formation that had conquered galaxies, and found one man waiting. Jin-Woo stood alone on an empty plain between the Jaffa army and the Stargate. No cover, no support, no visible weapons. Just that black coat and silver eyes that reflected the afternoon sun like polished mirrors. Behind him, 300 meters distant, SG teams scrambled to evacuate the last civilians through a wormhole that felt too slow, too fragile, too mortal to matter against what was coming. The Jaffa army halted, 10,000 warriors staring at one human. Silence fell like a shroud. Even the wind stopped, like the planet itself was holding its breath. The lead first prime raised his staff weapon. His voice boomed across the plain through helmet amplification. "Shadow Monarch, the system lords have judged you. Surrender, and your death will be swift. Resist, and we will paint this world with your—" Jin-Woo raised one hand. Palm out, a gesture of silence that carried more authority than any god voice the Jaffa had ever heard. "You talk too much," the first prime snarled. "Fire! All units, fire!" 10,000 staff weapons discharged simultaneously. The plane lit up like a newborn star as concentrated plasma converged on Jin-Woo's position with enough thermal energy to vaporize a city block. The ground exploded. Dust and superheated sand created a mushroom cloud visible from orbit. The Hartak motherships adjusted targeting solutions. orbital cannons charging for secondary strikes. When the dust cleared, Jin-Woo stood exactly where he'd been. Coat unmarred, eyes unchanged, shadows writhing around him like living armor that had drunk the plasma fire and converted it into something darker, hungrier, impossibly patient. He didn't shout, didn't gesture dramatically. Just closed his eyes and whispered one word in a voice that resonated with the finality of closed caskets and forgotten graves. Arise. The ground didn't crack. It screamed. 3,000 years of accumulated death. Miners worked until their hearts stopped. Children born into slavery who never saw freedom. Families executed for minor infractions. Rebels buried alive as examples. All of it rose at once. Not from shallow graves, from the planet itself. From soil soaked with so much suffering it had become consecrated ground for atrocities. Shadows poured from the earth like blood from a wound. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. Every human who died on P2X555 under Goa'uld occupation, every slave whose name had been forgotten, every soul ground into dust to feed System Lord ambitions, they rose. Shadow forms wearing the faces they died with, armor from eras spanning millennia. Weapons ranging from primitive mining tools to ancient technology the Goa'uld had forced them to excavate before executing them to keep secrets. Carter's scanner went absolutely insane, numbers cycling so fast her laptop's processor couldn't keep up. She stared at the readout, voice barely audible over the sound of an army birthing itself from grief. Life signs, but also, oh God. She looked up at O'Neill, face pale. Colonel, I'm reading emotional resonance. The shadows aren't just reanimated matter. They're grief, weaponized sorrow. Every death, every loss, every moment of despair. He's giving it form and purpose. O'Neill watched the Shadow Army coalesce, 30,000 strong, facing 10,000 living Jaffa, and felt his grip on reality wobble. That's not possible. That's divine, Teal'c breathed. The Jaffa warrior dropped to his knees, staff weapon clattering from nerveless fingers. Tears tracked down his face unchecked. I am witnessing a god, not false divinity stolen by parasites, but true power, justice given form, vengeance postponed but never forgotten. His voice broke. They remember. Every slave I commanded, every human I killed in Apophis's name, they all remember. Jin-Woo opened his eyes. They blazed white-hot, twin suns of compressed power that made the Hatak sensors malfunction from sheer energy output. He didn't need to speak. His army understood. 30,000 shadows surged forward in perfect synchronization, not running, not charging, but flowing like liquid darkness given murderous intent. The Jaffa army fired everything. Plasma grenades, staff weapons, personal shields, enhanced warriors with genetic modifications that made them immune to most projectile damage. They fought with the desperation of soldiers realizing their gods had lied about invincibility, watching shadows absorb plasma fire and grow stronger from it. A shadow miner took a grenade to the chest, absorbed the explosion, and used the energy to tear through 3 Jaffa warriors with mining tools that remembered what agony felt like. A shadow child, maybe 8 years old when she died, wrapped around a genetically enhanced super soldier and dragged him, screaming into the ground until only his hand remained visible, clawing at dirt that had become hungry. It wasn't a battle. It was an exorcism. 10,000 Jaffa facing 30,000 ghosts who'd been waiting 3 millennia for this exact moment. The shadows didn't just fight, they spoke. Whispered names of people the Jaffa had killed. places they'd destroyed, children they'd separated from parents. Every shadow carried a story, and every story ended with the same lesson. False gods bleed. Jin-Woo walked through the carnage like a king inspecting his domain. The Naquada sword rested on his shoulder, unused because he didn't need it. His army was enough. He stopped before the lead first prime, the warrior who demanded surrender, and watched dispassionately as shadow warriors pinned the commander to the ground. You serve false gods. They sent you to die, proving a point that no longer matters. Jin-Woo knelt, meeting the first prime's terrified gaze. When you return to your master, and you will because I'm letting you live, tell him this. I've killed 8 monarchs. Your system lords are number 9 through 13, and I'm coming for them soon. He stood, looked up at the 15 Hotak motherships hovering in orbit, orbital cannons charged but hesitating because firing would kill their own ground forces. Jin-Woo raised his hand, and 30,000 shadows stopped moving, turning as one to face the sky. Tell them, Jin-Woo said quietly, that this is what real power looks like. Baal watched from his flagship's command throne as 10,000 Jaffa warriors collapsed under the weight of 30,000 shadows, and for the first time in 2,000 years of parasitic immortality, he felt genuine fear, not tactical concern, not strategic anxiety, pure, primal terror that whispered truths no god should acknowledge. Mortality was negotiable, but this Shadow Monarch had the leverage to renegotiate terms permanently. His hand hovered over the orbital bombardment controls. One command would glass the planet, vaporize everything, Jaffa, shadows, Tauri, and the human who'd made system lords remember they could bleed. But the hesitation cost him. Because while Baal calculated probabilities, Jin-Woo looked up at the 15 motherships and smiled, then vanished. Baal's sensors screamed proximity alerts 3 seconds before Jin-Woo materialized on the bridge through a method that made Goa'uld ring transporter technology look primitive. No energy signature, no dimensional distortion. Just suddenly present, standing 20 meters from Baal's throne with that black coat rippling in recycled air, and silver eyes reflecting command consoles like polished mirrors. Every Jaffa warrior on the bridge raised weapons. Baal raised his hand, stopping them with a gesture. Stand down. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who'd survived assassination attempts through conversation rather than combat. So, the Shadow Monarch honors me with a personal visit. Should I feel flattered or terrified? Both, Jin-Woo said simply. He surveyed the bridge with the casualness of someone touring a museum rather than invading a warship capable of sterilizing planets. Nice ship. Gold plating, holographic displays, throne made from crystallized smart matter. Very theatrical. Your interior designer has a flair for compensating. Baal's eyes blazed with symbiotic fury, but his smile remained perfect. Insults, how refreshingly mortal. Tell me, Shadow Monarch, do you know why I'm called Baal? Why among all system lords, I'm considered the most dangerous? He stood slowly, descending from his throne with predatory grace. Because I don't rely on brute force. I win through cunning, adaptation, and knowing exactly when to change strategies. His hand moved. The bridge lights died. Emergency klaxons screamed, and from hidden compartments throughout the command deck, weapons emerged. Ancient technology Baal had scavenged from a dozen dead worlds, devices that shouldn't exist. Tools the ancients had built before ascending to higher planes. Energy weapons that could disrupt molecular bonds. Gravity wells that could crush matter into singularities. Temporal distortion fields that could age targets 1,000 years in seconds. All of them fired simultaneously. Jin-Woo disappeared into a maelstrom of ancient firepower that would have obliterated an Asgard mothership. The bridge became a light show of destruction, energy signatures spiking so high they registered across the entire star system. Baal watched through tactical displays, seeing matter itself coming apart at quantum levels, watching reality scream under the weight of weapons designed to kill gods who'd forgotten they were mortal. The weapons stopped, power cells exhausted. Emergency lighting flickered back online. Jin-Woo stood exactly where he'd been, coat unmarred, expression unchanged. Shadows writhed around him like living armor that had drunk the ancient weapons output and converted it into fuel. My turn? He moved. Not running, just suddenly in motion, closing 20 meters in a blink, and Baal barely activated his personal shield before Jin-Woo's fist impacted it with force that cracked the energy barrier and sent the System Lord sprawling across his own command deck. Jaffa warriors opened fire with staff weapons, plasma bolts converging on Jin-Woo's position, but he walked through the barrage like someone strolling through rain, annoying but ultimately meaningless. The Naquada sword materialized in his hand. Baal's eyes widened, recognizing the alloy composition, a blend of Goa'uld and ancient metallurgy that shouldn't be possible, powered by energy signatures that read as weaponized death itself. Jin-Woo swung once. The blade didn't cut through the command console between them. It erased it, matter simply ceasing to exist where the weapon passed. Baal activated his personal ring transport, vanishing from the bridge and reappearing in his private chambers 3 decks down. He had contingencies. Always had contingencies. His fingers flew across hidden control panels, activating ship-wide defenses that would flood every corridor with nerve gas lethal to humans. Electromagnetic pulses that would fry unshielded nervous systems, bulkhead doors made from trinium alloy that could withstand starship-grade weapons. Jin-Woo walked through the sealed door like it was mist. How? Baal demanded, backing against his own trophy wall. Shelves displaying artifacts stolen from conquered civilizations, each one a testament to his superiority. What are you? Jin-Woo's expression softened slightly, something almost pitying entering those silver eyes. I'm someone who climbed from the bottom. I was weak once, the weakest hunter in my entire country. Watched friends die because I couldn't protect them. Then I was given a choice. Stay weak and die forgotten, or fight for power and lose everything that made me human. He raised the sword, not threatening, just demonstrating. I chose power, killed monarchs, became one, lost friends, lost family, won a war that almost destroyed my universe. His voice dropped. And then I came here, found more parasites wearing crowns, and realized the fight never ends. There's always another tyrant, always another false god who needs to learn mortality. Baal's hand touched an artifact on his shelf, an ancient personal defense device he'd stolen from a dead Atlantean. It activated, projecting an energy shield rated to withstand direct Hatak cannon fire. I am Baal, Supreme System Lord, ruler of... Jin-Woo's fist punched through the ancient shield like it was tissue paper, grabbed Baal by the throat, and lifted him off the deck. The System Lord's eyes blazed as his symbiote flooded his system with adrenaline, strength, healing factor that let Goa'uld survive injuries that would kill baseline humans. He grabbed Jin-Woo's wrist, trying to break the grip, and felt bones that might as well be titanium. "You're not a god," Jin-Woo said quietly. "You're a parasite who got lucky, found a species you could hijack, built an empire on their bodies, convinced yourself that longevity equals divinity." His grip tightened, and Baal felt his host body's trachea compressing despite the symbiote's desperate attempts to heal the damage faster than it accumulated. "But I've killed actual gods. Beings that existed before your species crawled out of primordial soup. Dragons that could level continents. Monarchs that commanded concepts like death and destruction." Those silver eyes blazed white-hot. "You're not even in their league." Jin-Woo threw Baal across the chamber. The System Lord hit his own throne with enough force to crack the smart matter, symbiote screaming inside his pouch as it sensed something its evolutionary programming couldn't categorize. A predator that made Goa'uld feel like prey. Jin-Woo knelt before Baal, sword resting casually on his shoulder. "I'm letting you live. Not from mercy, because you're going to deliver a message to every System Lord in this galaxy." He leaned closer, voice dropping to something that carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Tell them the hunt has started. Tell them their empires are built on sand. Tell them I'm coming for each one personally." His smile was colder than the void between stars. "And tell them that when gods bleed, slaves learn to dream." He stood, walked toward the chamber doors, paused. "Oh, and Baal, evacuate your ground forces from P2X555. You have 10 minutes before I stop being polite about it." Jin-Woo vanished, leaving Baal alone in his trophy room surrounded by artifacts that suddenly felt less like symbols of conquest and more like epitaphs for civilizations that had learned, too late, that power without wisdom was just another form of suicide. The 15 Hatak motherships broke orbit within 8 minutes of Jin-Woo's departure from Baal's flagship. Not a retreat. System Lords didn't retreat, but a tactical redeployment that fooled absolutely no one watching from the planet's surface. 10,000 Jaffa warriors scrambled back to Teltak transports with the desperate efficiency of soldiers who'd seen their gods proven mortal, leaving behind weapons, armor, and the certainty that had defined their entire existence. The Shadow Army watched them go, 30,000 grief-forged warriors standing perfectly still, like monuments to suffering that refused to be forgotten. O'Neill lowered his binoculars, face frozen in an expression caught between awe and existential crisis. Did Jin-Woo just make 5 System Lords run away? Like, actually run? He looked at Carter. "Carter, please tell me your senses have a rational explanation for what I just witnessed, because my brain is currently filing this under things that violate the fundamental laws of how reality works." Carter's laptop had given up trying to process the data, screen frozen on readings that suggested Jin-Woo's energy output during the Hatak infiltration had briefly exceeded a supernova. "Sir, according to these numbers, Jin-Woo phased through solid trinium bulkheads, survived ancient weapon systems that could age matter to dust, physically overpowered a Goa'uld wearing a personal shield rated for starship combat, and did it all without breaking a sweat." She closed the laptop gently, like it might shatter. "I have no rational explanation. I'm not sure rationality applies anymore." Daniel stood among the freed slaves, 300 humans who'd spent their lives believing Goa'uld were invincible, now watching mother ships flee like children caught stealing cookies. An elderly woman touched his arm, voice trembling with something between hope and terror. The Shadow King. Is he one of the ancients returned? Is he here to punish the false gods? Daniel searched for words in a dozen languages and found none adequate. He's someone who remembers what it's like to be powerless and decided no one else should feel that way. Jin-Woo materialized beside them without warning, and 300 people flinched as one. He looked tired, not physically, but the kind of soul-deep exhaustion that came from winning battles that never should have been necessary. His silver eyes surveyed the freed slaves, the Shadow Army still standing vigil, the Stargate humming with the promise of escape to safety. Everyone through, now. The System Lords will regroup, and next time they'll bring more ships. Teal'c approached slowly, each step carrying the weight of a century's shame meeting a single night's redemption. He dropped to one knee, fist over heart in a Jaffa salute, but his voice cracked with emotion no warrior should admit. Shadow Monarch, sung Jin-Woo, you have done what the Tok'ra could not accomplish in generations, what the Tauri have fought for years to achieve. You have made gods bleed, made them fear. He looked up, tears streaming freely. I pledge my life to your service. Command me, and I will... Stand up, Jin-Woo interrupted gently. I don't want servants. Had an army of shadows who'd follow any order without question, and it was the loneliest thing I've ever experienced. He pulled Teal'c to his feet, meeting the Jaffa's gaze with something approaching kinship. You're free, Teal'c. Actually free. Not freed by me. You broke those chains yourself when you betrayed Apophis. I just showed you that the chains were always breakable. What will you do now? Teal'c asked. The System Lords will hunt you, send assassins, deploy fleets. They cannot allow you to exist. You are proof their divinity is theater. Jin-Woo's smile was sharp. Let them try. I've been hunted before, by things scarier than parasites with delusions of grandeur. He turned to Hammond, who'd emerged through the Stargate with an expression that suggested he'd aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. General, we need to talk. 20 minutes later, in a hastily established command tent near the Stargate, Hammond sat across from Jin-Woo with SG-1 flanking him, and the weight of Earth's future pressing down like atmospheric pressure. Mr. Sung, you've just declared war on every System Lord in the galaxy. That makes you either humanity's greatest asset or its most dangerous liability. Both, probably, Jin-Woo admitted. But here's the thing, General. I didn't come to your universe planning to start a war. Came through a dungeon gate that connected to your Stargate somehow, ended up on a desert planet, killed some Jaffa who attacked me. And then, he gestured vaguely at the chaos outside. Everything escalated. But now that I'm here, now that I've seen what the Goa'uld have done, 10,000 years of slavery, genetic manipulation, cultural genocide, I can't just walk away. Won't. Hammond's expression was unreadable. What are you proposing? An alliance. I hunt System Lords. You handle the aftermath. Evacuate freed populations, integrate liberated Jaffa, rebuild civilizations. I'm good at destroying things. You're good at saving them. Together, we could actually win this war. Jin-Woo leaned forward, and for the first time since arriving in this universe, he looked almost vulnerable. I'm tired of fighting alone, General. Spent years in my world doing everything solo because I was the only one strong enough. But strength without purpose is just violence, and violence without wisdom just creates more problems. His voice dropped. Help me be better than that. O'Neill raised his hand. Question: if we agree to this totally insane alliance, what's to stop you from deciding Earth's in your way someday? Not trying to be rude, but you literally just made 5 system lords run away. That's a lot of concentrated oh crap in one person. Jin-Woo met O'Neill's gaze steadily. Nothing stops me. That's the truth. I could conquer this planet tomorrow if I wanted. Could raise an army from your graveyards, command shadows to enforce my will, become exactly what the Goa Old are, another tyrant with better PR. He stood, walking to the tent entrance, looking out at the Shadow Army still standing vigil. But I've been a king, commanded millions, had power that made gods kneel. And you know what I learned? He turned back, and his expression carried the weight of someone who'd climbed to the summit and found it empty. Power without people who keep you honest just makes you a monster with good marketing. Hammond stood as well, extending his hand across the makeshift table. Then let's make this official. Stargate Command formally requests your assistance in liberating Goa Uld-controlled territories. In exchange, we provide intelligence, logistical support, and... He paused, choosing words carefully. Friendship. Because I think you need that more than another army. Jin-Woo gripped Hammond's hand, and for a moment, every shadow on the planet pulsed with energy that felt like the universe exhaling tension it had been holding for millennia. Agreed, but I work on my terms. No suicide missions for your people, no unnecessary casualties. And if I say evacuate, you evacuate. I won't have human deaths on my conscience because someone wanted to play hero. Deal, Hammond said firmly. Carter was already pulling up star charts, marking System Lord territories with tactical precision. Sir, if we're doing this, we should prioritize targets, hit supply lines first, disrupt their Naquada mining operations, force them to consolidate forces, which makes them vulnerable to... Major, Jin-Woo interrupted gently. I appreciate the strategic planning, but there's something I need to do first. He walked outside, and the Shadow Army turned as one to face him. 30,000 warriors forged from grief, held together by his will, each one a story of suffering that deserved to be told. You've waited 3,000 years for justice. You got it. The Jaffa who enslaved you fled. The gods who commanded them bleed. His voice carried across the plain with unnatural clarity. But I can't keep you. Can't hold souls hostage to my war, so I'm giving you a choice. Rest or continue fighting. The shadows didn't speak. Couldn't, really. But Jin-Woo felt their response like emotional resonance in his chest. Some dissolved peacefully, grief finally released, souls moving on to whatever came next. Others remained, choosing purpose over peace, war over rest. When the dissolution ended, 5,000 shadow warriors remained standing. Teal'c approached the Shadow Army with reverence bordering on worship. They choose to fight. They choose to protect, Jin-Woo corrected. There's a difference. He turned to Hammond. I'm leaving them here. 5,000 shadow warriors bound to Earth's defense. They'll activate if your world is threatened. Otherwise, they'll remain dormant. Consider them insurance against anyone who thinks humanity is easy prey. Daniel's eyes widened. You're creating a myth, a legend, the Shadow Army that guards Earth. In 1,000 years, People will tell stories about this moment. Good, Jin-Woo said simply. Let them. Maybe it'll make the next tyrant think twice. He walked toward the Stargate, hands in his coat pockets, looking for all the world like someone heading home from work, rather than someone who'd just rewritten galactic power dynamics. He paused at the gate controls, looking back at SG-1. I'll be back. Got a few system lords to visit, some false gods to remind about mortality, but this... He gestured at the freed slaves being evacuated, the Jaffa warriors who'd laid down weapons to join the rebellion, the Shadow Army standing eternal vigil. This is worth fighting for. O'Neill saluted casually. Give 'em hell, Your Majesty. Jin-Woo's smile was genuine for the first time since arriving in this universe. Colonel O'Neill, I am hell. He stepped through the Stargate, silver eyes the last thing visible before the event horizon swallowed him, and somewhere across the galaxy, a system lord felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. In SGC control room days later, a single shadow warrior stood in the corner. Still, silent, watching, eyes glowing faint silver in the darkness. Waiting. The war against the system lords changed that day on P2X5555, not because humanity suddenly gained superior firepower or ancient technology, but because a hunter from another universe showed the galaxy something it had forgotten. Gods bleed when you hit them hard enough. Jin-Woo became a ghost story whispered across Goa'uld territories. Jaffa warriors deserted by the thousands, seeking the Shadow Monarch who promised freedom over false divinity. System lords deployed fleets to hunt him, only to find ships drifting dead in space with crews missing and shadows painted across bulkheads in patterns that screamed warnings. The rebellion spread like wildfire, not because humanity was suddenly strong, but because Jin-Woo had proven weakness was always a lie, parasites told to maintain control. He never conquered, never claimed territory, just hunted, freed slaves, and vanished before anyone could call him savior or tyrant. Teal'c joined him permanently, the Jaffa warrior finally finding a cause worth dying for in a king who refused to let anyone kneel. And on Earth, 5,000 shadow warriors stood eternal vigil in places humans couldn't see, waiting for the day their king's promise would be tested, that no false god would ever chain humanity again. The multiverse never sleeps. More tyrants await. More false gods need reminding, but now they know. The Shadow Monarch remembers what monsters taste like, and he's always hungry. The multiverse never sleeps. More crossovers await.